as if wishing to disappear. I stood up straight, my fingers subconsciously reaching into my coat pocket. Where the USB lay, I pulled the chair closer. Set my bag on my lap. Then took the USB out. Landon. This? You gave it to Daniel. You wanted me to see it, didn't you? His throat moved in a swallow, and that was his answer. Not a nod. But an admission. I opened the hospital laptop. A nurse had left it on the table, the screen glowing faintly in the corner. When the USB clicked in, the tiny sound felt like an offbeat heartbeat. I scanned the folders. They were all coded: A7-21, CAM, B2 log BLK3. I clicked on the first file marked in red, a marker Daniel said Landon had added so I wouldn't confuse it. The video opened, no sound, only images. The underground parking garage of the building where I had lived for 4 years, empty, with flickering fluorescent lights. I had walked through this place hundreds of times, without ever finding it frightening like I did now. I glued my eyes to the frame. A man wearing a black hoodie stepped into view, walking calmly. Not like a thief. He went straight to Landon's SUV, the one I had complained about 3 months ago because Landon kept leaving tools in the trunk. The man bent down, opened the car door. No signs of forced entry. He opened the car like he had a key. I blinked. No, I wasn't mistaken. I zoomed in on the camera panel, and it became clearer. The door opened smoothly. The man sat in the driver's seat for about 10 seconds, then stepped out. He took nothing, left nothing, but I saw a tiny spark at the ignition. Landon. I turned to him. Do you know who that is? Landon clenched his jaw. His face paled. A second later, he spoke. Rose. He wasn't stealing the car. Then what was he doing? Are planting something, Landon said, his voice so low I had to lean closer. They just needed the engine to start, and it'd all be done. Why? Why would they do that? I asked. Like someone standing before a locked door, knowing what lay behind was something they weren't ready to see, because I knew too much. Landon replied. Mira turned back, her eyes swollen, and for the first time that night, she looked straight at me. Rose. He saved me, Mira said, her voice thin as breath. I wasn't the target. He only covered for me because I was the first person to notice that strange car showing up a few nights ago, but they weren't after me. I asked quietly. Who are they? Mira shook her head. I don't know, but Daniel knows more than he's saying. Landon immediately turned toward Mira, his eyes widening in panic. Mira, no, don't drag Daniel into this. Landon, Mira's voice broke. You don't understand. The door swung open. Daniel stood there, snowflakes melting on his sleeve, his expression calm enough to make something colder than the winter air settle inside me. He looked at all three of us, his gaze not lingering on anyone too long, before he spoke, very softly. We need to talk, all of us. But the way Daniel said it made me realize instantly. He didn't walk in to ask whether his wife was okay. Rose, he said. There are things you need to hear. And I'll say them before Landon does. Landon pushed himself up, pain twisting his face, but he still tried to sit. Daniel, no. Not now, not now. Daniel repeated, his voice low. After your car exploded halfway down the road, after Mira got dragged into it, after Rose saw that footage, this is exactly the time. I turned to Landon, his eyes held 1,000 things trying to break out but locked behind them. He shook his head at me, very slightly, as if telling me not to listen. I placed my hand on the edge of the table, tightening my grip, then looked at Daniel. I'm listening, I said. Daniel turned, the light casting his face in a harsher, more unfamiliar expression than I had ever seen on him. Tonight's crash, Daniel began, wasn't the first incident. 2 weeks ago someone tried to ram Landon's car in the garage. Why didn't you tell me? Landon finally looked at me. In his eyes wasn't just fear for himself, there was something that looked like despair. Rose. I didn't know how to tell you without pulling you into it. He whispered. I thought. If you stayed away, you and the baby would be safer. Our member. Our member sentiment. Our member sentiment. Our member sentiment. Our member sentiment. Daniel placed his hand on the table and pushed the USB toward me slightly, as if confirming that all attempts to avoid the truth were over. It all started with this, he said. And up until now, none of us fully understand what Landon accidentally stepped into. Just as Daniel finished speaking, Landon's monitor let out a soft long beep before returning to its steady rhythm. I glanced over and saw his eyelid twitch, like something still unsettled him. Even in his half-conscious state, I pulled the chair closer, setting the USB on the small bedside table. My fingers brushed the cold metal, and for the first time I felt something clearly. Whatever was on that USB was not something Landon ever meant to hide from me forever. Daniel stood by the door, both hands in his coat pockets, his eyes wary not of me but of the doorway, as if expecting someone to walk through it. Mira sat with her head lowered, her shoulders trembling lightly as if she could still hear the screech of brakes in her mind. The baby kicked once slow, firm as if reminding me to focus. Daniel, I said, my eyes still on Landon. If you know anything else, say it. He glanced briefly at Mira, then stepped forward. That USB doesn't have only video. I didn't speak. I waited. There's a list, Daniel continued. Times, movement logs, names of people entering the garage at unusual hours. I turned to him. A list of who? Daniel looked at me, and for the first time all night, the calm expression slipped from his face. Of the people Landon believes are involved. I didn't ask further. Daniel nudged the USB a bit closer gently, as if afraid a strong movement would break everything. Landon cracked his eyes open, trying to lift his head. I immediately stood up to support his shoulder. He looked at me first, not with the eyes of a husband who had done something wrong, but of a man who knew something terrible had arrived at the door before he could stop it. Rose. His voice was so hoarse it was almost just breath. You must not look at that. When you're alone. I squeezed his hand. Then tell me. What's in it? Landon swallowed, his eyes shifting to Daniel, then to Mira. A very brief hesitation, then he looked back at me longer. The name of the person who opened my car, Landon said. The name of someone who works in our own building. Right then, the hospital speaker called another doctor. Mira lifted her head, her eyes red but clearer than before. I told you already, Mira said quietly to Daniel. We shouldn't go back to the apartment. They know every schedule. Daniel rubbed his forehead, like someone too tired to hide anything anymore. Rose, he said, it's not just Mira and Landon who were being watched. I looked at him, my heart sinking. You're on the list too. Mira lowered the blanket a little. Taking a deep breath as if bracing herself, she looked at Daniel before speaking, almost asking permission. Daniel gave a faint nod, saying nothing. Landon turned slightly toward us, though it looked painful to move. I have to tell you this, Mira said, and I'll say it clearly. So you don't have to guess anymore. I don't have anything with Landon. I responded with a small nod. I didn't need Mira to prove it with more words. Daniel moved a half step closer to Mira, placing his hand on the metal bar at the foot of her bed. Go on, he said softly. Mira stared at the empty space in front of her, as if looking straight through the hospital wall. I have a younger sister, she began. Her name is Lila. Lila went missing 6 months ago, Mira said. No one found a trace. No camera caught her. No one saw her last. The police said Lila left the city, but I know she didn't. She lifted a hand to her forehead, then dropped it immediately as if afraid she'd lose courage if she held it there longer. That night, before she disappeared, Lila came to the building where we live. Mira looked straight at me. She came to see me, but she never made it up to the apartment. My feet felt cold. Daniel didn't look at me, he looked at Mira, his expression that of someone who had heard this before, yet never found it easier. You're sure? I asked. Sure. Mira replied immediately. I checked every camera in the building. Some footage was erased, but 2 clips were left. In them, Lila walks toward the basement elevator. After that, nothing, Daniel added. Very clean. No shoe prints. No hallway footage. Whoever it was knew exactly what they were doing. I turned to Landon. He tried to lean against the pillow, grimacing,